Welcome to the Always Bayern Chelsea show, one and all. Today is Wednesday, August 14th, and this is a very, very special episode. It is the official Season 2, 2024-2025 season preview show. So thank you for joining us. If you're new here, this is a show where two old buds discuss our new love for the sport, the beautiful game, the sport of football or soccer.
Yeah, episode 1 of season 2, and I couldn't be more happy to be sitting here with you today about to discuss our two favorite teams.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped. So I am the Bayern Munich fan, if you haven't guessed by the title of this show, Always Bayern Chelsea, or if you're a returning viewer/listener, you already know that.
And I'm the Chelsea fan, the better of the two, of course.
All right, well, let's jump right in. And first of all, this is a video episode, so go ahead and check it out on the YouTube channel. Always Bayern Chelsea. Do all the YouTube stuff you're supposed to do, like and subscribe, and that way you'll be notified as the season kicks off and we release more content.
Going to be lots of content headed your way this season, whether it's a match preview, a review of a match, talking about transfers as we head through the end of the transfer window, talking about players, talking about tactics, strategy, managers, ownership. We'll be covering it all, so really looking forward to the upcoming season.
Totally. So with that, let's hop right in and get started by talking about Bayern Munich. You good with that?
Let's do it.
All right, so kind of to recap, since we last spoke, Bayern Munich has played 2 more friendlies. And I'm going to start by just briefly mentioning their most recent one because, as you'll come to see, I think the second friendly against Spurs actually says a lot about how the season's going to go. So before we talk about that, I just wanted to mention briefly that yesterday, on Tuesday, Bayern Munich traveled to Austria to play the Austrian Bundesliga team WSG-Tirol. I think that's how you say it. Not quite sure about that one, but honestly, that match was a little bit boring. For the most part, Bayern Munich got what they needed. They got a win, and they also got, more importantly, some minutes for some youngsters, as well as some minutes for some veterans who were returning from international duty, who kind of just needed to get that game time in. But overall, it was a pretty boring match, to be honest. Offensively, Bayern and Tirol looked pretty flat. However, Bayern did win 3-0, and Kane scored in the first, I believe it was the 3rd minute, which was good to see. Paulinho scored in the 48th, I want to say, which was also good to see. And then Vidovic scored later in the match, maybe the 60th. I guess now that we're on video and I'm looking at the camera, I'm not going to be looking at my notes as much, so we're gonna just go with my memory, which is shaky at best.
Yeah, if anything, it was exciting that there was 2 goals scored within minutes of the start and the restart, which is always an exciting thing. I didn't necessarily catch a ton of the highlights. I saw the volley from Paulinho for his goal, saw the starting lineup, and there was a lot of names I didn't quite recognize as more the loose fan of Bayern of the two of us. So great to see some of those extra guys maybe getting some minutes in that last preseason match. Always an important thing. Totally.
And I'll end my brief discussion of this match with just a couple shout-outs because there were some all-star performers. Like I mentioned with Paulinho's goal, he just played very well overall, did his classic tackling, destroyer, number 6 mentality and style of play that Bayern's really been craving. And, he was just a beast out there overall. He was my man of the match. And then I also wanted to mention Alphonso Davies looked very good. He was pretty electric, with his speed, like he always is. I believe he had the assist to Kane, actually, right away. Either way, he was involved in that play. And Eric Dyer, also, he was the center back that kind of held things together as Upa and Kim didn't play. So, and to be quite honest with you, Eric Dyer's looked like our most steady center back this entire preseason. I think we'll get to that as we kind of preview the team because there's certainly some question marks around the defense, but had to give Eric Dyer a shout out, and then also Vidovic. He scored that goal and just had a great preseason overall, as well as the other youngsters that played that match. They looked good, and it was good to see them get some minutes.
Certainly love to hear that about my man Eric Dyer, since all I'm seeing on the internet is apparently De Ligt must be so much worse than Dyer, since they're keeping Dyer over De Ligt, and everybody acts like that's a terrible thing for Bayern. I think Dyer's a fine player. He's not going to break any worlds down with his play, but you always need a solid center back, and Eric Dyer's the man for that, in my opinion.
Yeah, so he's certainly a veteran presence out there. Honestly, a soothing presence, I gotta say. He's one of those guys who certainly doesn't have pace, but he, when you watch him, he's directing play out there, especially with the youngsters, in these preseason matches. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see a ton of Dyer this season. I think it's going to be mostly the Upa and Kim show. And then I think once Ito gets healthy and maybe even Stanisic and some others being slid into that center back role, we'll see. But yeah, I did see a lot of that online about De Ligt. And, I got to say, De Ligt and Dyer pretty much started almost every match together at the end of the season there once Kim and Upa were kind of running to the ground and making mistakes. So I don't know. I think that what the management of the club says is that De Ligt was just making too much money, so they had to sell him. Whatever you want to believe about that, we're going to miss him.
Definitely will miss him. Always good having a Dutch player on your team. Really no reason for that. I just happen to like Dutch players.
Well, you might want to check out Manchester United then, because
they got them all.
They got
including
them all
the
now.
manager.
Yeah. So, anyways, let's rewind a little bit and look at Bayern's second to last preseason match, a 3-2 victory against Spurs in London. And to be honest, there's a lot to talk about with this match, and like I said, it's gonna kind of just roll into my overall season preview, because the two preseason matches against Spurs, I think that Vincent Kompany's style was really becoming clear, and there's a lot to talk about with that, to be honest. The press was extremely aggressive, and it really was too much for Spurs to handle, to be honest. The offense looked incredibly electric, just rushing up the line was incredibly high. And then on the other hand, the defense looked incredibly shaky, I would say. Specifically, the positioning of the center backs was very shaky. You would see Kim and Upa playing extremely high, almost playing as attackers at times, which really led to some huge holes, led to pretty easy counters. And, we saw in the first 30 seconds of the match, Spurs scored in 25 seconds off of a mistake from Kim, Upa, and Joshua Kimmich at he was playing midfield that match, but 3 mistakes in a row and then a goal right away. It was not the start you'd want to see.
Yeah, I didn't catch the lineups. Were Spurs playing a strong team?
They were. Most of their starters, I believe, were playing both of their preseason matches against Bayern, and Bayern had a good amount of their starters there playing. Kane didn't play those matches. Well, he played 10 minutes in the end of the second match, but he was coming back from international duty. Davies didn't play, and then Coman didn't play. Upa played in the second one, and Sané still didn't play, and Olise, who just joined the squad. So we're still missing some of our attackers, so to see guys like Gnabry and guys like Tell really just, causing trouble all around the pitch and looking so good, that's a good sign for the team.
Yeah, good sign as well if you're looking sharp against a team like Spurs. I haven't been reading a ton about Spurs and how they're looking in preseason or coming into the year, but second year under their new manager, had a solid year last year for the most part until the end. So I'd imagine they're feeling confident and strong coming in off of that second year. So always good for Bayern to face a team like that. And if they're looking sharp, as I said, that's certainly a good momentum builder coming into the year.
Yeah, so I guess I'd be remiss, or I wouldn't be telling the full story if I didn't say these matches against Spurs that I'm talking about where they looked so good. That was really the first half. Things started to fall apart in the second half of both of these matches. And you could look at this a couple ways. During the second half, there were a lot more rotations. Guys who likely aren't going to get as many minutes during the season were put in. So that certainly messes with the flow of things, and you can chalk it up to that. But on the other hand, Kompany's saying that he's going to be rotating a lot more this season, and you kind of have to, just with the squad that Bayern currently has.
Yeah, I think they still got a strong squad. I certainly think on paper they're better than they were last year, especially if these guys stay healthy throughout the entire season. I really don't see them playing worse than they did last year. And we'll get to our predictions, but I think going into the season, they're definitely starting off on a strong foot.
Yeah, I agree. The place where we could be weaker is the defense, just because of the style that we're playing lends itself to more defensive mistakes. I shouldn't say mistakes. Lends itself to easier counters, and then when you have guys who are known to make defensive mistakes, I guess you're going to be relying on Stanisic or whoever's playing left back, Davies, Guerrero, to kind of just bust their asses and cover for some of these counters or cover for some of these mistakes positionally by the center backs. So we'll see what happens there. Honestly, it might not matter that much in the Bundesliga if their attack is as good as it's looking. They might stand, to concede a few goals and be just fine, honestly.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to make, is I think in the Bundesliga, when you're a top team like Bayern, you want to be out on the front foot, trying to score as many goals as you can, being really aggressive. You can take more risks. Teams are going to, a lot of times, sit further back on defense, and they'll try to counter when they can, but Bayern can rely on their talent, their speed, and their power, and just the fact that they go into every single match with better players than the other team.
100%. And I think that's going to bode well for them in the Bundesliga. I think Kompany's style is going to do very well, assuming everybody stays healthy, because this high press, aggressive style combined with European football as well could lead to injuries. That's, again, part of the reason why it would be smart to rotate more, like he said he was going to. But yeah, we'll kind of see. I think we'll get a little bit of an idea with this first match here on Friday in the Pokal, kind of the style that he wants to play and maybe even the lineup that he wants to use. Because if I were him, I would really put out, the best lineup I could outside of guys who are nursing injuries still. Zane, as an example, or maybe Olise as he just joined the squad. I would pretty much put out the best lineup I could just because it's my first match as the manager. Fans are hungry after a trophyless season. I think you really got to get started on the right foot.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what your lineup would be, and that's interesting you say that, because normally, you're thinking the opposite, but in the Premier League, you tend to have a Premier League match or two first before you'd get to a Carabao Cup or FA Cup, which doesn't even start till much later, So that's interesting because they're presented with this opportunity with this Pokal match and then don't have their first official Bundesliga match until later. So I would probably agree with that logic. You might not have to play guys super hard for 90 minutes. If you think one of your stars, can't go 90, you don't need him to necessarily. Hopefully you're getting out to a lead early on. That'd be ideal. And I'm guessing that's what he'd be thinking if he does that you play your strong guys and you get out to a 2-0 lead, and then maybe you can coast a little more from there.
Yeah, and I would agree with that too. It's a little bit strange with the Pokal being so early. But yeah, usually you're going to be maybe playing some of these youngsters more, or guys like Muller perhaps. We'll see what happens. I guess I'll just go ahead and throw out my predicted lineup for that, because I was kind of thinking about that today. Yeah, Bayern's first official match, Friday, August 16th, 1:45 p.m. Central Standard Time, playing Bundesliga 2 side Ulm. And I think we're going to see Neuer. And then as far as the defense goes, I think Guerrero's going to start just because Davies hasn't been with the team as long. Wouldn't be surprised if he started. I think we'll see the center back pairing of Upa and Kim. That seems like what Company is going to roll with this season. I think we're going to see Stanisic as the right back. Sasha Bouet is nursing a mysterious injury right now. He hasn't been practicing with the team. It hasn't been reported what it is, so I'm not sure. The midfield, I think we're going to see Paulinho and Kimmich to start. There's a couple different things you could do there. You could throw Goretzka in, you could throw Leimer in, you could throw Pavlovic in, and we'll probably see some rotation there, but I think that's how he's going to start it. And then as far as the attack goes, Kane will probably be up top. I wouldn't play him 90 minutes, but we'll see what Company wants to do. And then the rest of the attack is where you might see some changes, or I guess my prediction might not be right, but I think we're going to see Tell on the left wing, Musiala in the middle, and then Gnabry on the right wing. Who knows? There's room for rotation there. And I guess this is assuming the Company even runs the standard 4-2-3-1 that Bayern's used to playing, so we're not even sure about that, to be honest. But yeah, that's what I would say is my predicted lineup.
Yeah, certainly sounds like a strong lineup. You never know for sure, and it's tough to tell from preseason. Some managers, they will do exactly what they did in the preseason in that first match. Some completely throw that out because it's not relevant and they were experimenting. It all depends on the manager, the opponent, the situation. If you have multiple tactics, maybe you have different lineups and formations that you use. So I'm not necessarily going to see their lineup Friday and say, okay, this is locked in forever. I think he'll probably change things up a little bit as the season starts and we get into flow. We see guys come back from layoffs from Olympics or Euros or injuries, whatever the case may be. So, but I'm very interested to see what he does and how he manages the game really is what will be important to see.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So far, everything I've seen in terms of training clips as well as preseason matches, Company's very hands-on. He's very involved. You can hear him on the sidelines, which I really love. He's got a big, booming, deep, powerful, commanding voice. So I love hearing that on the sidelines. But yeah, let's just end this season preview. I just want to kind of talk about some of the players on Bayern and maybe talk about what's in store for them. Some of them might not even be on the team for much longer, so that's interesting. But let's start with Kane. He's got to win a trophy. That's what he came to Bayern to do. I think he's going to have a great season. It's to be seen whether he plays more of a poacher role, which would be beneficial in this high-pressing offense, or if he does what he kind of did for England in the Euros and for Bayern last year, which was sink back into a more midfieldy type facilitation role. And, he's great at getting assists, but as the world's best goal scorer, sit in the box, man, score some goals, break the record for the Bundesliga, hoist a trophy, do something like that.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Kane this year. He definitely needs that trophy. He needs to score goals, like you said. Needs to sit in the box more. That's what I'm looking for out of him. And I would also say, and this might contradict something I'll say later with some predictions about Kane, but I think he needs to manage his minutes definitely this year. I know I've mentioned that in the past, but those would be my goals for him, would be for him to score as many goals as possible, stay in the box, and stay healthy.
And win a trophy.
I wouldn't want to see that personally. Just kidding. He deserves it. He's a good guy.
Okay, so speaking of Kane, let's move on now to Michael Olise, because I'm extremely excited to see how he links up with Kane on that right winger, most likely, position. Just driving in, making stuff happen with his left foot, hopefully scoring a ton of goals, hopefully providing a ton of assists to Kane if he stays in the box. And honestly, that's one of the spots I'm looking forward to most, is just watching him in a Bayern uniform. Watched him a little bit in the Olympics. So special, and just really, really warmed my heart and just got me going seeing him in the Olympics. So I want to see him in a Bayern jersey.
Yeah, if he stays healthy, with all due respect to Kane, Elise will be their best player this season.
Whoa. Well, let's check back in on that, at a later date. Also, as always, Tell, my boy, I'm excited to see him. He had one of the best preseasons. I would say him and Gnabry for Bayern probably had the best preseason. He's got to get more minutes this year, and it's tough with this overloaded attacking side.
Yeah, he's the type of guy where you need to step up. You need somebody else to kind of step up that's young, take some of the heat off of Kane, take some of the pressure off even Elise, because he's got a lot of pressure on his back coming in as a high priority signing. So need somebody to step up.
Totally. And the other man who may step up this year, screw it. The other man who is going to step up this year is Serge Gnabry. When Gnabry's on, he's great. If you know any of the jokes, it's just the reality. When the man travels to London for some reason, he puts on a show. He scores multiple goals most of the time when he's in London, and he showed that by scoring against Spurs in the preseason. But he put a smile on my face in the Champions League last year, scoring against Arsenal. He had a game a couple years ago where he scored like 4 goals, I think, against Spurs. So I'm looking forward to seeing him cook this season. I hope he stays healthy, because when he's on, he's the man.
Yeah, he's a great player. And I was just thinking through me saying what I said about Elise when I realized there's another player that realistically should be their best player this year, not Kane. I'll wait to say who it is till you get to him. But let's just say he had a great Euros.
Yeah. Fine, we can talk about Musiala. Jamal Musiala, there really isn't much I can say about him other than watch his highlights. He's magic at dribbling. Every once in a while he, in my opinion, puts his head down and dribbles a little bit too much. And he's sometimes gets clogged up when he plays the 10 there. I like him, honestly, as a winger where he has more space to kind of go to work. But we're going to look for him to mature. He's one of the best young players in the world, might be one of the best players in the world. He had a magical Euros, like you pointed out, and it's kind of a big year for him because his next contract is going to be most likely a keys to the city type of contract. So, he could be very dangerous this year.
And if he builds off that momentum from the Euros, he'll be a star. Simple as that.
Definitely. Speaking of stars, Leroy Sané has the potential as well to be a star for Bayern. And also, speaking of limiting minutes, when you were talking about Kane, Sané has to limit his minutes. I'm assuming he's good friends with Kompany as they played together at Manchester City. So hopefully he knows that he has to limit his minutes. For some reason, Nagelsmann, Tuchel, everybody just played him 90 minutes every match. And, he ended the year last year pretty injured and really wasn't playing up to his potential. So he had an operation not too long ago, so we're going to hope he's ready to go and puts on a full season where he lights things up.
Yeah, excited to watch him play, especially watching him in the Champions League was a lot of fun, so excited for him.
And then I also should mention Kingsley Coman because he is still on the squad, although there's a chance he gets loaned out or just sold. PSG could be a suitor. He, unfortunately, has been injured similar to Gnabry quite often, but there's still a role for him, I think, on this team.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff about him in the news, whether it's somebody thinking about buying him permanently on loan, whatever the case may be. So I feel like he's not going to leave, but we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, so I'm not really going to spend much time on the younger guys, but you got the Irankundas of the world, Vidovic. I feel like I'm missing somebody, but Bayern has a ton of young potential there at the attacking role. the midfield, I'm really just excited to see Kimmich get back into the midfield. He's played awesome there in the preseason. He's a guy that you need to keep happy. You need to keep him around. He's a leader on the squad, quite frankly. Paulinho, I'm super excited for. I love that style of play, just slide tackles left and right, winning the ball. Just a beast back there, truly a beast. And then, it'll be fun to see Pavlovic develop in the midfield as well. I hope that company figures a way to rotate these guys where they're all getting minutes and they're all happy and developing and whatever. Goretzka is another guy you could see in the midfield. He is being forced out by the club, it seems. By all accounts, he's being told there's absolutely no role for him on the team going forward, which sucks. He's kind of been cast aside before, especially under Tuchel, and he fought for his spot and ended up being an important part of the team. I'm not a Goretzka hater like a lot of fans seem to be. I want to keep him around, especially with injuries. I mean, the man's a great box-to-box midfielder. Konrad Laimer now is somebody also who doesn't quite fit in with the squad. Again, I like him. I'd like to see him get some minutes. He's a workhorse, box-to-box, The man just is a guy who I think you can bring in as a sub and have him really raise the energy of the squad.
And this has maybe never been said on any podcast take ever about Goretzka, but the fact that his old team wants him back, the fans, I think it's hilarious. I think it's awesome. I think he should honor those fans. They're really working hard on getting him to come back, and he should just say, I'm one of you guys. I'm coming back.
I really want to make a Conor Gallagher joke here, but I'm not going to because God knows what's going to happen with that situation. We'll get there, of course.
Actually, not even God knows. It's that crazy of a situation.
Totally. All right, so now on to the defense here for Bayern Munich. We lost De Ligt. We lost Mazraoui, two guys who were going to be stable, steady forces back there. And now we're just relying on Eric Dyer as a stable, steady force on that back line. So we'll see what happens. I'm half kidding. I'm half serious. A single tear might have rolled down my face as I was watching Matthijs de Ligt's welcome video to Bayern from a couple years back the other night. And I'm going to miss him. Treat him well, United.
Yeah, as I mentioned to you, the guy was hardly on Bayern. I understand he's great. I agree that you didn't want to lose him. I'm sad he's on United now as a Chelsea fan. It's just a little funny to me. I don't know. I think it's weird what Bayern's doing with that whole situation because it seems like they've kind of let some guys go and then not added the pieces that they would need to replace. They've added in some other areas for sure that are great. Guys, we've talked about the Elises and the Paulinhos, but I don't know, part of that strategy to me is weird. I will say Vincent Kompany, being one of the great center backs that we've seen in football, I'm guessing he's got it figured out and knows what he wants in that position, so I wouldn't be too worried as a Bayern fan.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, what is going to happen, I think, with the style the Kompany wants to play is he wants center backs who can damn near be attackers, who can play in the midfield, really press that line up and facilitate things. De Ligt really isn't that. De Ligt, and neither is Dyer, honestly. But De Ligt was one of those guys who would just be a beast and defend the goal and would really just save any sort of threat, any sort of defensive breakdown. De Ligt would be there and just lead the back line positionally, in terms of how he carried himself, in terms of how he communicated with people. And Bayern doesn't have that anymore. So that's what I'm worried about, especially with guys like Kim and Upamecano who haven't played as well as you would have hoped at Bayern. And that's not to say that they're bad players. They're certainly great players. But they're kind of just heading into a prove-it year, I would say, because there's really only so many big mistakes in key matches that fans can take.
Yeah, we'll see if it works out for Kompany.
Yeah, and I guess if it doesn't, There's a chance you could slide new signing Hiroki Ito in at center back once he gets healthy. You could slide Stanisic, as I said before, into the center back role. So he has a few options. They're not very deep there. Maybe they'll sign Ta. Who knows?
Or you could just sack Vincent Kompany.
Too early for that conversation. But yeah, we've talked about Alphonso Davies enough on this podcast. I don't have much to say about him at this point, except I'm skeptical at best that this plan is going to work out with him. I think he should get sold because I think he's going to leave for Madrid after this season, and I would hate to see him go for free. Another reason why the selling of Mazraoui didn't really make sense because he's a guy who could fill that role. We'll see, maybe Kompany will use him more as a winger with this super aggressive system, and that could suit him really well. Maybe Kompany will, just woo him, win him over, and he'll say, you know what, I'm actually going to extend. I'm actually going to stay at Bayern. Madrid's not good enough for me.
Yeah, there could be stuff going on behind the scenes too. You just never know.
Yep, and then we got Rafael Guerreiro, as I mentioned. Great utility player. The man can kind of do it all on the left side. Hopefully he stays healthy. He's had bouts with injuries. Hiroki Ito, left back, left center back. The man just broke his foot, unfortunately, in his preseason debut. Let's wish him the best. Hope he gets better and turns it on for Bayern. Sasha Boué could fill in at that right back role as well. Honestly, haven't seen enough out of him just because he's been injured most of last year to say one way or another. I think he could fit in well with Kompany's system. He's quick. He's good with the ball. We'll see.
Yeah, to really only have those couple injuries, it seems like, as the main injuries on the team, it's not a bad spot to be. As you said, we wish them well in their recovery and hope they can play soon and see what they're made of, especially Ito coming on as a transfer. You're always excited to see what new guys can bring to the squad.
Yeah, and then not much else to say about Eric Dyer either. Beautiful man with a beautiful heart, beautiful presence in the locker room. Just seems like a friend for some reason. I don't know why that word came across my brain, but
yikes.
That's Eric Dyer for you. Anyways, I guess all else I can say is, Neuer will be the goalkeeper. Sven Ulreich will be the backup, and then Daniel Peretz is the third string goalie. All have good things about them. Neuer will start pretty much all the important matches. I don't want to say he's lost a step. He can still play at a very high level. We've seen a few more mistakes from him than earlier in his career, I suppose. But, I think he proved at the Euros that any sort of talk about him fading away is really just bullshit. He's still got it. And then I guess I'll give a shout out to Sven as well because he's the ever present soldier, I guess you want to say. The perfect backup, really. Does his job whenever he's called. Never really causes trouble. Doesn't really fight for a starting role with a guy like Neuer. But he's always there as the backup.
Always good to have a good backup.
Yeah, I think that's I guess that's all I'll say about Bayern for now, unless you want me to give a prediction.
No, I got a nice section for some predictions that we'll lay out after we talk about Chelsea. So
take it away.
Yeah, I will take it away. It's interesting at this point because Chelsea love to be super active in the transfer period up until the very end, which is August 30th. I don't believe there's 31 days in August. Correct me, Internet, if I'm wrong, but that will be interesting to see. It's kind of tough to really preview the entire squad, not knowing if some names will leave, if they'll add some names. They could potentially be adding 2 massive names in the next few days that would change entirely everything that I'm really about to talk about here. So I think, and go ahead.
There's 31 days in August.
Is that the one where the 2 knuckles meet? It is. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. Are we getting this in frame, folks? Do you know that trick?
Yep.
January, February, March, April, May, June, July 31, August 31. I knew I'd be screwed over by that. Nonetheless, they love using that transfer window period. So we'll see. I think I'll kind of talk a little bit about previewing this match against Man City, what I think the lineup could look like. I'll try to talk about the team as a whole. I will mention Chelsea technically had their last preseason match against Inter Milan on Sunday. They drew 1-1. I didn't catch every play in detail, so I'll kind of give the highlights a little bit. And that's that I think they look great offensively in possession of the ball. Inter Milan mostly had a low block, sat back, which I think was great for Chelsea to practice against. They'll see that a lot in the Premier League. Leslie Ugochukwu came on late again and salvaged a draw for the team, scoring late. They generated chances, just didn't put them away. Marcus Thuram scored a banger for Inter Milan, so nothing to really worry about there defensively. All in all, the preseason was kind of a wash, as I mentioned in the past. Am I really going to look into it too much? Probably not. I think the team is building, though, which is important. They're building with what Enzo wants them to do, building towards something great, and I'm definitely excited about how they ended with that momentum.
Especially against a low block. I know that was sort of Chelsea's kryptonite in the past, and like you said, it happens in the Premier League, so that's especially important. I didn't catch any of that match, so I can't quite speak to it.
Yeah, I'm certainly excited for another reason tactically, because we've talked a lot about the inverted fullback that Enzo Maresca loves. There's this other piece to it, which is kind of the diamond in the midfield. So you can kind of play it a couple different ways, but what they used against Inter was that diamond where the inverted fullback is one side, then you got the three midfielders as part of that diamond, and it works out really well in the middle of the field and creates a great base for bringing the ball forward. I could show it to you on pictures later, but it's actually pretty cool, and you can literally see it exactly looking like a diamond and how the players are set up. So that's great that they're actually successfully managing that. Ideally, you'd probably have Caicedo, Gusto as your right back, Enzo, and maybe an Nkunku would be the last part of that midfield. So that's something to watch going forward, who plays in those specific spots in the team.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's very interesting, watching these tactics. I started following this guy on Twitter. I'd love to give him a shout out. I don't know his name off the top of my head, but he posts these great threads of pictures of how they're lining up. Just displays perfectly what they're trying to do.
Well, it seems very fluid. These shapes aren't set in stone, and it seems like as the match moves on, as different players come in and out, the shapes morph and change.
Oh, totally. And you wouldn't have to invert on that right side, as we've talked about. You could easily invert Cucurella on the left side, so things can change, no doubt about it. And I think as we talk about who potentially would play against Man City, I'll throw out what I'm expecting. This could be way off. It's just based on who will be available in my eyes, who I think is mostly fit at this point, and ultimately who I think deserves to play based on some preseason. Sanchez, as much as I'd love to see Jorgensen, I think Sanchez will start the year as the number one keeper. You just kind of got to see that through, as I've talked about.
And is Petrovic still hurt?
Petrovic is back in training now.
Oh, okay.
Lots to talk about. Will he be permanently sold? Hopefully that will happen. It's just because you can't really carry all three.
Yeah, don't they even have more than 3 goalies on their roster right now?
So they have a lot. There's a lot of talk about that. It's kind of overblown. If you looked at years past with Chelsea, they had so many players. You can loan out so many guys.
Yeah.
The third keeper they usually keep is Marcus Bettinelli. They've had him forever. He's kind of your locker room guy. Doesn't really play ever, but you can always hold him. Great guy. But, yeah, I think Sanchez will be out there. I think your back four is going to be Cucurella, Levi Colwill, Wes Fofana, and Melo Gusto. As we know, Reece James won't be available, suspended for the first 3 due to a red card. So that'll be your squad there. I think they'll invert Gusto on that right side. And then I think in the midfield, you're going to see Romeo Lavia, Enzo Fernandez, and possibly Nkunku in that kind of middle spot. This is where I don't know for sure. I just don't think Caicedo played enough at the end to be fully fit to start. If he is, I'd probably rather start him. Lavia played every match, so I think he's going to be out there. And I think they're going to build the team around Enzo, so that's why I'm putting him out there.
Well, he did wear the captain's armband a bit in preseason, didn't he?
He did, yeah. Anytime Reece James would come off, Enzo had that armband, so look to see if they announce that too. I would imagine they'd announce who the captains are before the season starts. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. Caicedo, in my opinion, is going to be somebody you're starting in all the main games going forward. I just don't know if he's fully fit quite yet, so I'll throw that out there. And then your front three attacking, I think you're going to see Palmer start. He played the entire second half, I think, against Inter. I think you can throw him out there for 60 minutes. If he's fit for that, you might as well. I don't see why you'd want to just bring him on for the last 30. I don't know. It's against City. I think he'll have some extra motivation. But if you really don't think he's fit at all beyond 45, then probably bring him off the bench. So TBD with that. Obviously, then you're bringing on Noni instead. But then I think you see Sterling on the left wing, just has been available the most. Has maybe looked better than Mudryk, tough to say. I guess you're probably starting Mark Guiu as your forward. Jackson came on late against Inter. I don't think he's fit at this point, coming off an ankle injury. And I think it was a pretty bad ankle injury, high ankle sprain. So, yeah, you're probably starting who I think is a 19-year-old forward at this point. Has looked great, but that's kind of interesting.
I was going to say Guiu was one of the brightest spots I thought about Chelsea's preseason. Again, I didn't catch all of it, but I was very surprised with him.
Yeah, it's tough to say. You're going up against Man City, one of the biggest clubs and best clubs in the world. Do you start a guy like that? I don't know. Maybe you throw Nkunku up there instead,
Sure.
And then you shift things around. Maybe bring a Caicedo in or a Dewsbury Hall into the midfield. We'll see, but that's kind of my estimation at this point. I think in terms of talking about some of the other players involved here, as I said, a lot can change in the next week for sure with Chelsea. Something I want to point out is that they purchased Pedro Neto from Wolves, a massive signing. It's a $60 million plus signing. Guy that can play on the wing, can play in the 10, can even play up top as a forward. Don't think he's going to be somebody that starts this first match, but, maybe comes on late. I think they're going to try to use him a lot at left wing just because Sterling and Mudryk haven't shown enough still at this point, which is frustrating, obviously, for me as a big Mudryk guy.
Yeah, that was one of the holes I thought that Chelsea potentially had in their lineup was that left wing. And I guess as long as this guy isn't a Brazilian wonder kid or a left-footed right winger, then it'll be fine because Chelsea seems like they have enough of those.
So the funny thing is, he is technically a left-footed player, I believe.
He plays left wing, though?
But
or
he just
a lot
can
of different
kind of play
positions?
anywhere. Wolves used him the most on the left wing.
Okay.
He's definitely more two-footed. Noni, for example, so heavy with the left foot. Cole Palmer, dominant with left, but can use the right as well. Has shown that he can score with the right multiple times. Neto is really more in the middle where he can use both, but technically his dominant is that left foot. But the way Maresca uses the wings, they play out so wide, it kind of helps if you are the same foot as the side you're on because you might be doing more crossing than cutting into the middle. Just kind of depends, especially if you have Palmer on the right and he crosses into the middle. Maybe you want a left winger that stays out wide more. We'll see what happens with that. Chelsea could be bringing in another winger in the next few days, a guy by the name of João Felix, who technically has been a Blues player. He was on loan with us for half a year, and that would really screw all this stuff up because there'd be a lot of options at that point.
Well, we'll see if the relationship between Atletico and Chelsea can ever be mended. I feel like I hear rumors about that every day. Not just João Felix, but Yeah, it would be interesting to say the least. I hope for Chelsea fans he comes back because he seems like a good player.
Yeah, he'd be a great option to have. I think you'd have to get rid of somebody, and I don't even want to talk about it because we'll see what happens, and I want to waste my breath on it, but we definitely need to figure that out. Get Gallagher out of there. You can't bring him back at this point. He's coming back to London, and
he's in London now.
It's a mess. Yeah, it's a mess. And I will throw out to the Victor Osimhen rumors really, really heating up. So, ultimately, if you get him, he's your forward starting, even over a Jackson, obviously, especially for the price you'd pay.
Special.
I'd probably like to see that happen because it gets Lukaku finally off your books. Napoli wants him. Sounds like maybe they'd even give up Cesare Casadei to Napoli. As I said, I won't comment too much because we don't know if it's official, but that's something that wouldn't even really be in effect until next week because he's not playing against City, even if they get him tonight.
That would be awesome for Chelsea. He's an electric player as well, adding to an electric attack.
Yeah, I'll just mention a couple other key players that could have a role in this game. You got Tosin, center back, Badiashile. They could even start for all I know. Disasi, haven't seen him at all, really. I don't know what's up with him. Rumors now he might leave. Ugochukwu could make a late appearance again. You still got Jackson who could come in. I've mentioned Noni. Mudryk could come in. Dewsbury Hall will probably get time, might even start, but definitely will get at least 20 minutes, I would guess, especially being Enzo's guy from Leicester City. I'm probably even forgetting some guys at this point. A Renato Vega. Could he play at left back? Maybe. Who really knows? But as I said, it's just tough at this point with the window still open, a new manager, all these guys changing spots. So that's kind of going to be my preview at this point. I'm expecting a strong performance from Chelsea, I will say.
They always seem to do well against City.
Yeah, I'm not going to throw out my prediction for the score quite yet. We'll see that later in the week. But I think that they will at least draw with City.
Wow.
I just think Chelsea, I don't know, the vibes from me right now are tremendous. And this will lead right into our predictions because I'm done with Chelsea talk now, and I'd like to predict Bayern and Chelsea. First off, where will they finish in their respective leagues?
Let's discuss.
Yeah, so let's talk about some predictions. The most important is where they will finish in the table. First, we'll start with Bayern. Where do you think they'll finish in the Bundesliga this season?
All right, we'll start with Bundesliga. This is my most exciting thing. Bayern's going to win the Bundesliga this year. All right? Might sound crazy. No disrespect to Leverkusen. I think they're an incredible squad. I think they'll be incredible again. But I don't think they'll be able to recreate the no-loss season that they had last year. And I think that Bayern's going to be incredibly hungry in the Bundesliga. And I don't think that they're going to lose as many of those matches that they lost last year where it's like, how did you lose that match? How did you go up 2-0 and then concede 3 goals to, Heidenheim or something? I don't see that happening again with Vincent Kompany's style of play. Granted, a lot can happen. Guys can get injured, whatever. Bayern's going to win the Bundesliga. Kane's going to win his first trophy.
Not crazy at all to say. I also have them winning the Bundesliga. Frankly, it would be embarrassing if they didn't. I just think Bayern, you're not going to go 2 years in a row of not, especially when you win it, 13 times in a row or something?
I think some of the stuff that happened last year isn't going to happen again. Granted, I expect the top of the Bundesliga table to be extremely competitive. Mentioned Leverkusen. I think Stuttgart's going to be great again. I think Dortmund's going to be a lot better than they were last year in the Bundesliga. I think Leipzig's going to be great. I think Frankfurt's probably going to be even better than they were last year. We all joke about a farmers league, and the bottom of the Bundesliga, competition clearly isn't as good as a Premier League, but I'll go on record and I'll say that the top of the Bundesliga table will perform well in Europe, and just like they did last year, I think the top of the Bundesliga is great, is competitive, is super fun to watch, but Bayern's going to come out on top.
Sounds like we're going to have a great season for the B in the ABC. But where is Chelsea going to finish in the Premier League?
Nice. Chelsea's going to finish 6th in the Premier League.
2 years in a row in 6th. Interesting.
Yeah. I think, that was the first thing that came into my head. I honestly hadn't thought about a prediction for Chelsea. But I think there's still going to be some growing pains under Enzo. It wouldn't surprise me to see Chelsea finish better. I'm not going to lie. Just the talent that they have alone, Palmer alone might carry them a little bit farther. I think Aston Villa got better. Even teams like West Ham got better. Obviously City, obviously Arsenal, Liverpool's good. I think United got a lot better. So the Premier League's just going to be tough.
It is disappointing to hear you say 6th. I won't lie. I just think if you do not improve again in this third season with the new ownership, it will be such a failure. And I know it's tough to say that, but you're a historic winning club. You gotta put performances up that show that you are that club. So I have Chelsea finishing 4th. I think they will get Champions League football. On paper, this team is way too talented to not finish top 4, especially if they bring in more guys, as rumored potentially. They're so talented. I know paper doesn't always mean everything, but I like the way they've built momentum and started to understand the system that Maresca brings, the way they talk about it, the players and Enzo. I just think they're going to be a strong, cohesive unit, and they can even experiment in the Conference League if need be, which frankly they should run straight through. So I'm confident. I think we're back in the Champions League, baby. Next, I was going to move on just to top scorers for each respective team.
Oh, okay. Well, I think the top scorer for Bayern is going to be Kane.
And what about for Chelsea?
I think Palmer's going to be 1.
Fair enough. I just think Kane for sure, number 1 for Bayern. And I think Nkunku's scoring the most goals for Chelsea this season. If they bring in an Osimhen, I'd maybe have him as number 1.
Well, I guess it depends, too. Like, if Palmer takes pens, that'll give him an extra couple probably.
It will for sure. And speaking of Palmer, I have Palmer leading the charge for Chelsea for the most assists this season. I think what he provides, whether on the wing or in the middle, is so special. Led the team last year in assists. I think he'll do it again. And I think a player that's very similar to Palmer will have the most assists for Bayern this year.
Is that Elise?
That is Elise.
I'd agree with that.
What about for Chelsea, most assists?
Honestly, that's something that has never even crossed my mind one bit. Palmer's not a bad guess. Mudryk. No. I'll agree with you. I'll say Palmer.
Fair enough. All right. How about a stat that maybe gets overlooked, oftentimes goes to a player that isn't your star, but a very important stat: who will have the most minutes across the entire season, all competitions for each team go?
Ooh, is Neuer a cop-out? Can I say Neuer?
Keeper's not involved.
Okay. That's a really good question. I might go with Kane or Zane, and I honestly hope it's not either one of them, to be honest.
And for Chelsea?
For Chelsea, I really have no idea for Chelsea. Let's go with Enzo.
I like the choice of Enzo. For Bayern, I mentioned this earlier in the pod. I said I want Kane to manage his minutes.
I do too.
I don't think they're necessarily going to. I think he's going to end up with the most minutes.
Yeah, me too.
He had the most last year. I just think he's important, and they're going to use him a ton. For Chelsea, I'm going Caicedo. I mentioned he might not start this first match. That means nothing to me. He's so important. Ended the year as the best player. I think he'll be leading the way. But you did mention Enzo. And this next one I have is your surprise or breakout player for each team. And for me, it wouldn't be a huge surprise, but I think breakout player will be Enzo Fernandez for Chelsea. I think he's really going to show his strengths in this Enzo Maresca system. Some believe he won't. I think he really will. And for Bayern, I think Tell is really going to be the breakout guy this year, mostly because you love him so much and have huge hopes for him, but that's my guy for Bayern.
Yep. Matthijs Tell is also my guy for Bayern Munich, definitely. I think I said 20-goal season in this episode already, so we'll stick with that. And for Chelsea, I was going to say Enzo, but I think I don't want to say that because you said that, and I can't go 2 for 2, same as you, especially after you. It looks really bad on me. So this is, I don't know if this is necessarily surprise, but I'm going to say Reece James because he was injured for so much of last year. Maybe a little bit forgotten about. Reece James.
Comeback player of the year. All right. Signing of the year. Your best signing.
Ooh. Okay. You could say Olise for Bayern, but I'm actually going to go with João Palhinha.
I'm saying Olise. As I said, I just think he's so good. For Chelsea, I wanted to go under the radar here. I'm going with Tosin Adarabioyo. That could be so brutal the way I pronounce that, but I wanted to give it a shot. I think he's the leader type, and center back is iffy for Chelsea. I think he could really step in and become the Eric Dyer of Chelsea.
A friend. I'm going to go with Guiu, I think, for Chelsea, but if they sign Osimhen, we'll give it to him.
Expected letter grade for the manager. Kind of an interesting one here, but based on your prediction for the year, what would be your letter grade for both managers?
Based on my prediction for Enzo, I'm going to have to go with a C because that's kind of just, in the middle, growing pains, but not detrimental to the point where we're slipping so far to mid-table, For Vincent Kompany, I'm going to go with a B, a solid B. And maybe we'll get to a little bit more afterwards because I do have a prediction for the Pokal and for Champions League as well, but I think it's going to be a B. I think that the attack is going to be so good and so electric that a lot of the holes that will be there on defense might not matter as much when it comes to Bundesliga ball, but I think will show their face in other competitions, other matches. I don't think it's going to be completely smooth sailing, but I think that his style is going to be a refreshing change compared to Tuchel's.
Spot on with Kompany. I have him as expected B. You need to win the Bundesliga, so that's expected. I can't give you an A just for doing that. Don't think they'll get it done in the Champions League, getting as far as they'd like. That's why I'm at B. Enzo, I'm saying A because I have them top 4 Champions League.
Fair.
And the next category that we'll be talking about here, I'll explain even more why it will be an A because Chelsea could be bathing in some trophies this season.
Wow.
And as we get to that, what are your trophy predictions for each team? This could be league, the side tournaments in German and English, and UEFA as well.
Okay, I'm going to give Bayern 1 trophy, Bundesliga title, as we mentioned. I think that they're going to exit the Pokal relatively early. I don't think they're going to lose to Ulm. I think they're going to beat Ulm. Wait until later in the week to see this preview because our match preview graphics really are going to be something special this year. Wait for a proper prediction for that coming out this week. But I do think Bayern's going to lose relatively early in the Pokal. Something just gives me that vibe, honestly, with the team, with Kompany, and also it's just what Bayern seems destined to do these last couple of years. They just haven't performed.
I think they're getting that Bundesliga trophy. I predicted them to come in first. I think they win the Pokal. I don't know enough about this tournament. It seems like a little lesser of a domestic tournament in Germany, but I think when you're a first-year manager with a good squad, you want your fans to get as many trophies as possible. So I think they actually will be motivated to do well. I understand they're in the Champions League, so they're going to try to do well there too, but I just think they're going to take as many opportunities as possible to get back to winning ways. They didn't have winning ways last year. I think they're getting back to some winning ways.
Well, if they win the domestic double, I'll have to buy you a cheeseburger or something because that'd be quite special. I do have an oddly specific Champions League prediction. If you want to hear that now, if you want to hear that later.
Might as well say it now, yeah.
Okay, so I think Bayern Munich is going to advance to the the knockout round of the final 8 of the Champions League, and they're going to be motivated because the final is in Munich this year, so that could be some extra spice, some extra icing on the cake for Bayern. However, I think they're going to lose to Real Madrid wherever they play them. So if they're on the opposite side of that knockout round, that would mean they're going to lose to Real Madrid in the final. If they face them in the quarters, they're going to lose to them in the quarters, face them in the semis, etc. That's my prediction for the Champions League.
Was the final not in Munich this year?
No, it was in Wembley.
Oh, you're right.
The Euros was in Germany.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably what I'm thinking of.
Yep. And then I guess I'll give Chelsea a trophy, though. How about the Conference League?
Well, if they don't win the Conference League, somebody's getting fired. That's for sure. My prediction for Chelsea, I have them going to the Champions League. You don't get a trophy for that. It's a good accomplishment. They're definitely getting that Conference League. If they don't, it's downright embarrassing.
Hold on. Sorry. I need to rewind a second. You're predicting Kane's going to have 2 trophies? That just dawned on me.
Maybe he got hurt before the season even started.
Okay,
it is wild.
Continue.
A blind squirrel finds a nut, ladies and gentlemen. So, Conference League for Chelsea, I think they're lifting the FA Cup.
Wow.
I just think Chelsea, the vibes, once again, I hate to say vibes again. It's such a buzzword these days, but boy, oh boy, they're so high for me right now. I think they're getting something else, an extra piece of hardware. I just think they've gotten close last year. You know, historically, the last few years they haven't done great in Wembley, but I think they're getting that FA Cup too, and it's going to be awesome.
It sounds like you and the vibes both might be high right now.
Maybe I am. Who knows?
That would be awesome.
And that wraps it up for the predictions I have. I think that covers most of it. It sounds like, you know, whether it's me or you, we're both predicting some happiness for the pod, which could be a great thing.
I mean, you're predicting 2 trophies for each. I'm predicting 1 trophy for each. And, you know, if that comes to fruition either way, cheeseburgers all around.
To those who used to say I'm not an optimist, I just proved you wrong.
Well, that's special. That's all I had as well. So I'm good to call it there if you are.
I will add one more piece. If you're a Milwaukee listener, Saturday this weekend, head to Red Lion Pub in the morning. There'll be a group of Premier League fans, me included, potentially Danny. So go there and we'll watch some Premier League.
Yeah, and as always, follow the Twitter account too, at Always Bayern Chelsea, because we'll be posting live as matches go on, as news breaks, etc., etc. Listen on Apple or Spotify or YouTube. Watch the videos. You know, we got some exciting stuff going on. I'm not so great at plugging, but that's what I got.
Sounds brilliant.
All right. Mia san Mia.
Up the Chelsea.